Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I am with the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas, and I figured no better day than today to talk about the history of the Alamo and the city of San Antonio. So, starting off, this area kind of gets its start in 1708, 1709, when a gentleman by the name of Olivares comes here on behalf of the Spanish crown to try to convert the native tribes here to Catholicism and to become loyal Spanish subjects. The reason why this was important is that this area was contested with the French Empire in Louisiana and in France, and they needed to have a better footprint of their claim here in the area to be able to make sure that it was going to remain part of New Spain. So this area gets started in 1718, really, when you start seeing the first settlements here, what would become San Antonio as Villa de San Fernando de Baja. Now, Bayer is actually a town in Spain, and the Spanish government, the local government, would actually start importing people from the Canary Islands over here to start, and pushing off and increasing the population here. While Oliveira started putting missions here, the missions were called Mission de San Antonio de Valera, and that would be the name of the mission. Now, it would move around quite a few times until it was placed here in its current spot in 1724. The buildings you kind of see behind me, these barracks, are actually the oldest buildings in all Texas. San Antonio, which was incorporated in 1731, is the oldest city, chartered city in all of Texas. So in the very, very early years, in this facility, it had no walls. Right where I'm standing, kind of in this area, these were row houses out here, and these houses, this is where the natives were actually living, the ones that were converting to Catholicism and becoming Spanish subjects. This is where they were living. The chapel you see behind me is not original. It's not the original chapel. They actually had another chapel here, but the person in charge of building it actually got into a fight with one of the Spanish soldiers, killing him, and they ended up, the building ended up getting destroyed as they were trying to get him out, and they were put up a temporary building. It was along this wall here, kind of on this side of the wall, going back towards the chapel, and that temporary chapel would last for quite a few years as they started trying to build the one that you see behind me. The one behind me actually never got completed. So as you go through the 1700s, you start seeing a slow increase of population here in San Antonio, but it's not really a lot, and it's not really enough to, prevent the incoming French from trying to come over. And they decided in 1793 that they were going to have to take, drastic measures. They basically secularized all of these missions, making them military outposts. Now, this is actually when it becomes known from Mission de San Antonio de Valera to what we call the Alamo. See, the company the Spanish government sent up here was from around the Rio Grande, and the companies, colloquially kind of known was the Alamo de Perez, and the Alamo word is actually just the Spanish word for cottonwood, and that's the name that the company had when they came up here, was Alamo Company. And so the building, because it was now part of it was their area, it was known as the Alamo. Okay, so moving in from the secularization in 1799, the Spanish thought that, they were very smart because Napoleon takes control of France, and they are really worried that he is going to start pushing for more territory in France and causing more conflict between French and Spanish colonies in North America. Luckily, though, for the Spanish government, and maybe unluckily for the Spanish government, Napoleon sold Louisiana to the Americans in 1803. Basically, all this did was replace the threat from France to a threat from America. You see, these guys being called filibusters, they were basically just kind of like frontiersmen. They were coming into what they thought was part of Louisiana. It was actually disputed on just if Texas was part of the Louisiana Purchase or not. So they were coming in, and again, Spain was concerned that they were losing their claim on the territory. So they were looking at ways of trying to create a buffer zone between them and the American Manifest Destiny. But this becomes a very, very busy time for Spain. See, after Napoleon sells Louisiana, he's got a load of cash, and he actually invades Spain. And the colonies start to kind of wonder if maybe they should do something different with themselves as well. And you start seeing around 1810 there's possible breakaways of the force of Mexico from Spain, and the Alamo Company here, stationed here, is in the mix. They're actually partially pro Mexico, partially pro Spanish Crown, and there are several battles just south of here. There's the Battle of Medina, which took place in 1813, and this is where a young 20 something lieutenant named Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna comes on the scene. He's actually vicious, and when the Spanish ride through here, they actually just slaughtering absolutely everyone. They don't even dismount from the horses. They just wipe the ground clean of any inhabitants in the area that they think are possibly wanting to break away, become an independent place. Something of known of Mexico. So this is what Santa Anna kind of gets his taste for how he's going to run his campaigns, and this is kind of important. So now we're into the 1813s. And so we're trying to decide, what we're going to be doing. By the chapel you see behind me, they start building that one in 1744. They never did get it completed, but that's when that building starts getting built. The Spanish, thinking they kind of have the Mexican Revolution kind of put down, reach out to a guy named Moses Austin to build a colony buffer between the United States and Spain. However, by 1819, that's kind of over. The Spanish created a treaty with the United States, settling the boundary, and then in 21, the Spanish are thrown out of here by the Mexican forces, and then in 1824, they create the Constitution, the Federal Constitution of 1824. This is important, this Federal Constitution of 1824, because the impresario program from the Mexican government, which they just took from what the Spanish government was doing, reached back out to Stephen Austin, Moses Austin's son, and said, "Go ahead and bring your colonists in. Let's build this buffer zone." And a lot of them were kind of moving up here in what is San Antonio, along with a few other communities in the area. And now you start having these Texians coming in. And the Tejanos, those were the native-born people in this area that were, some of them were left over from the Spanish Empire, and then they had the Texians. So that's different. Tejanos are the Spanish-speaking native-born people here. The Texians, those are the ones that are coming from, those are the filibusters coming in for the United States. And they are going to be having many, many battles. See, when they say remember the Alamo, it's not about, remember the Alamo. Which one? Which Alamo? Which attack of the Alamo? People here who had no really allegiance, who just living in the area, and you say, remember the Alamo, and they're like, oh, not again. Like, again? Like, over it, because this thing was always being being attacked. It was always, in the event, the defenders and the attackers were different sides throughout, this time period. So, what happens now is that, Spain tries to come back in 1829, and their valiant soldier from 1813 campaign is now fighting against them. Santa Anna is now a staunch Mexican, and he wants to see Mexico become an independent state, and he wants to see Mexico become an independent country. And the Spanish thrown out again, and now related to where he becomes the president of Mexico. Now this becomes really important because, see, in 33, when he kind of takes control, not a whole lot changes. But in 34 and 35, he starts getting rid of the 1824 Federal Constitution and implements it with what's called the Law of Seven, which is basically how I'm going to dominate every aspect of everyone's lives at all times. And that became an issue. And so a lot of Mexico revolted. It wasn't just Texas. Like, most of Mexico is like, yeah, dude, we're not doing this. So Santa Anna decided he was going to put all these rebellions down, and he put them down hard. However, in Texas, things were a little bit different. The Texians and the Tejanos actually started putting up a decent fight, and actually started kicking all of the Mexican forces out of Texas, one city, one fort at a time, until you get to December of 1835. And that's when this another huge battle takes place right here. See, this area, the northern wall, which is the post offices. This here would have been the western wall, and then they would have started fortifying it. That this would have been the Mexicans. The Mexicans were fortifying the Alamo for an attack because see the Texians had started taking out forts, and there was going to be an issue. And the Alamo Company had actually gone to Gonzales. This is September, late September of 35, and tries to get them to get back the cannon that the Alamo Company gave them to defend off native, attacks. Well, Santa Anna's like, I want all of it back. Like, this is rebellion. I want all this stuff back. So the Alamo Company goes over there in late September and says, can we please have the cannon back? And he's not looking for a fight. He really isn't. But the people at the Gonzales are like, we're not giving you back the cannon, dude. This is ours. Comes to confrontation on October 2nd of 35 when he asks again, hey, listen, people of Gonzales, I sympathize with you. I don't really like what Santa Anna's doing. I'm more on your side. In fact, the people of Gonzales actually try to get the Alamo Company to side with them. But their leaders are like, I'm not doing it. I can't do that. I am a loyal Mexican. And he retreats back to the Alamo cannon with, not in hand. And this is where you see that. So on October 2nd, when they fire that cannon at the Mexican Alamo Company, they have a big white flag with the painting of a cannon on it with the black stars that, come and take it. That's where this comes from. It is from the Battle of Gonzales on October 2nd of 35. Well, now, Santa Anna's brother-in-law, General Cuss, he's like, I know how to put down these rebellions. We're going to take care of this once and for all. And he starts marching through here, and he arrives here in San Antonio, and there's a military plaza, and then there's the Alamo. So the San Antonio and the Alamo are actually, there's quite a bit of a distance between them. And this is what you call the Siege of Behar. Now, the Siege of Behar, they actually have some really important Texians in history here. Initially, it's actually run by Stephen Austin, who is becoming in ill health and gets sent to be the commissioner to the United States. Sam Houston is actually busy trying to get forces and keep the Indians from getting involved in the conflict, and so he's not here. And then you have a gentleman by the name of Edward Burleson. He's actually the guy who founds Austin, Texas in 38. He takes command, and the siege is taking place. But it's to the point where a lot of his men are wanting to leave because they're not attacking; they're just sieging. They're just preventing them from getting resources. It's down south of here. They actually have there's a Spanish supply truck coming in. They actually take it out, and they think it is full of riches and gold and munitions. There's just grass because the horses here were dying, and the Mexican forces were trying to resupply their troops and their horses with food. And it's called the Battle of the Grass. This is leading into December of 35. Now the Mexicans are hoarded up here into the military plaza in San Antonio, and here in the Alamo. The Texans are the ones that are attacking. The Mexicans are the ones defending the Alamo in December of 35. And here, December 9th, General Cuss has to surrender. He has to surrender his troops here. Now, the Texians tell him, take your guns, take your stuff, and leave. Just go back a bit south of the Rio Grande. This is Texas. We are our own thing. This hurts the pride deeply. Hurts the pride of Santa Anna. His brother-in-law was disgracefully defeated in battle, and now he wants revenge. So he claims in January, I'm going to go up to Texas and I'm going to wipe out everything. Now he takes a large group of troops up here into what is Texas, and he's going to put down this rebellion. The Texians are at this point, very clear, hey, we're in this fight. This is going to be us. We are taking this fight on. So what happens is a couple of different things. One, the Alamo has people coming in from all over Texas, because they know Santa Anna is on the way up. So a couple of the important people here that you want to know about is Colonel William Travis. Colonel William Travis is actually from South Carolina, and he was born in 1809. Then you have Jim Bowie. Jim Bowie, he was from Kentucky. He was born in 1796, and this dude was ruthless. So the whole Bowie knife thing, so, he was a knife fighter. Knife fighting was a very gruesome experience. So this is how knife fighting took place. You were actually forced to sit on like this pommel horse, and you each had to take your weak hand, and you had to hang on to a guard, like a handle, and the other person, the strong hand had a knife. So we usually were right-handed, and you weren't allowed to get up until you had to agree to do this. People agreed to sit down and do this, and they fought with the knives. Another way is you got your thumbs and your wrists tied together as a handshake, and then you were fighting with a knife. That is how knife fighting took place. Now, see, in Kentucky, where he was from, he was a slave trader. He was a smuggler. He was smuggling slaves into Texas when the Mexicans tried to make it illegal. He was a rough, tough, mean guy. However, he was actually sick almost the entire time here while he was supposed to be in command, leaving William Travis in command solely, and he was in his very, very young day, 20s, early 30s. Then you had David Crockett. He hated the name Davy. David Crockett was a 3-term congressman, not consecutively terms, by the way, and he and President Jackson had a really bad falling out after the Creek War, the War of 1812. And Jackson actually sought to have Crockett forced out of Congress over the Indian Removal Act. So Crockett, says, "That's it. I'm getting out of here." He leaves his homestead in Tennessee, and I actually have a video about that if you want to go check it out. And he says, "So you guys, I'm going to Texas." He arrives to Texas just shortly before this all takes place, and he gets here. All he has really is his name. And he's really well known. He is like the celebrity, and he's here. He's on a mission. In his mind, he's the real deal. He is the real deal. So he's going to defend freedom and liberty. So he arrives here at the Alamo, and here's the thing: it's not just Texians. There are Germans. There are people from all over the British Isles. There are people from all over Europe. There are people that are coming in from Spain itself, people here, that were already here, and there are people that are coming in even from the Mexican side, because listen, a lot of these Mexicans did not really like what Santa Anna was doing. They wanted federalism, because that's what they're talking about, debate over federalism versus centralist, and that's what these guys were fighting over. They wanted to bring back the 1824 Constitution of Federalism. This is very common and similar to what happened in the American Revolution. The colonists basically wanted things back the way they were before, the 1766, 1763, 360. That they wanted to go back to before the taxes, before the levies, more representation. Well, they thought just basically left alone. That's what they sought after. The Texians were doing the same thing. We wanted to go back to the 1824 Constitution. We favored that. We are all about that. Listen, and in previous rebellions, the emissarios and the Texans were even on the Mexican side. They didn't necessarily want to be part of the U.S., but they weren't against it. I mean, the U.S. really wasn't out about annexing Texas either. I mean, it was kind of like that, we're seeing each other, but we're not serious about it type of relationship. That's what was going on. However, so on February 23rd, Santa Anna arrives, and he flies a red flag, meaning there was going to be no quarter. He wants revenge for what happened to his brother-in-law, because it's family honor at stake here. So he tells him, "You're not going to survive." Inside this fort, so like I said, I'm inside. This would have been the western wall. This would have been the south gate, which is kind of being rebuilt. This is the courtyard. This is where the battle took place. The northern wall is where the Mexicans broke in. He gives them this. There's going to be no quarter. And, initially, it's just skirmishes every day. The Mexicans and the Texians are shooting, pop shots at each other. Travis is writing letters, trying to get support, letting Sam Houston know what's going on, asking all of his friends, get someone, people from Gonzales, I need people from anywhere. Please come and show up. Luckily, a lot of the cannons and stuff were still left over from December of 35, and they quickly got them all mounted up. Now, the next thing that happened is that, the night of March 5th, it was pretty clear that, they had a few volunteers come in, but Sam Houston wasn't going to make it. and they sent out a woman to try to help negotiate a surrender or a peace. That wasn't happening. Meantime, during this whole process, there was a convention at Washington on the Brazos, and this is where the delegations of the people of Texas are actually deciding on what they're going to do. And it's very similar to like what happened in the American Revolution when delegates were in Philadelphia making decisions. The Battle of Bunker Hill takes place, and same thing here. The Battle of the Alamo is taking place while the delegates are in their Continental Congress, basically deciding what are they going to do. Washington on the Brazos on March 2nd, they declared they are independent fully from Mexico. They basically draw up a constitution, which is basically copy and paste of the U.S. Constitution, while this is taking place. So this Battle of the Alamo is basically going to be the very first battle of an independent Texas against the Mexican Empire. Now, the Texans had a little bit of faith that they could win because they had been taking on Mexican regiments all over the place and had been successful. They thought there was a chance. There is a chance, very unlikely, but there was a chance, and they really thought they could do something with it. However, now we're at the morning of March 6th, about 5:30 in the morning. This is the first night the Texians in the Alamo are getting any sleep. And all of a sudden you hear, "Viva Santa Ana!" William Travis wakes up and says, "Come on, boys, let's mount our guns, and let's go take it to them." The Mexicans rush the walls. Now, the Alamo is surrounded on all four sides. However, the only really success that the Mexicans have initially is at the northern wall. And that's where the post office and the courthouse are at now. In fact, you go 50 feet in there, there's actually a line that shows where the northern wall was and where Travis was. Travis dies very early on. He's almost like the first casualty of the battle on the 6th. And as the Mexicans move in, all of the soldiers here, the defenders, they're taking this courtyard, which I am actually in, and they fall back to the barracks, that old structure. Now, that structure was actually a 2-story structure at one time, and that's where the hand-to-hand fighting took place. That's where most of the battle took place, while the women and the children and William Travis's slave, Joe, were all put into the Alamo inside of a covered area for protection. 30 minutes, and 30 to 40 minutes, and the battle is over. Jim Bowie is actually killed right over here in a sickbed with a bullet to the head. There is a marker, if you look over to where that flagpole is right here, there's a marker right there that shows where they believe Davy Crockett actually fell. Now, they are not entirely for sure exactly. There's different accounts on where Crockett actually fell. Now, there were about 7 men that weren't killed in the onslaught. Now, Santa Anna was really pissed off that there was supposed to be no quarter. The red flag means red flag. However, they had 7 men. It's debated on if possibly Crockett would have been one of those 7 men. The guy who talked about that was actually a Mexican citizen, Mexican soldier, was actually in jail at the time he wrote this down. Joe was actually the slave of Travis, said that when he exited the doors, that he saw Crockett's body, with a bunch of dead Mexican soldiers all the way around him, as if he had taken them all out. There's also a famous painting where Crockett's got his Kentucky rifle, and these things were delicate pieces of equipment, unlike the Brown Besses and the muskets and flintlocks at the time. So swinging the thing as a club was probably not the best idea, but they were so desperate that's where they were at, is that they were using clubs. They were out of ammunition. So Santa Anna decides that he's going to let the women, the children, and the slaves go. He frees them, tells them, "Go, get out of here, go do your thing, but you're not staying here." He rounds up all the bodies. He takes the 7 survivors, executes them, and then tells his soldiers to take all of the defenders' bodies, that none of these people were going to be getting proper burials. He takes all of their bodies, and he orders them burned. They had 2 funeral pyres where they were on Sacramento, just burned, and we don't even know exactly, where, the exact location. We have ideas. There's a monument over there where it is. We have the general idea where it was, but all the bodies, there's no identification, there's no funeral, no marker. We find it later from like burn marks in disturbed soil. The Alamo becomes a rallying cry because don't forget it is the Texas is now independent. They're all on board with the independence thing, and Santa Anna leaves this fort, leaves this mission. He starts heading towards what is now Houston, and going towards Houston, the Sam Houston's actually prepared for him showing up. They get a track of where he's going, and they meet him on April 21st at the Battle of San Jacinto. Here's the interesting thing about the Battle of San Jacinto is it lasts 18 minutes. One of the quickest battles in military history. The Texians and the Tejanos, they slaughter the remaining Mexican troops. There's quite a few troops that are actually still here recovering from the wounded. I mean, there were 157 to 258 men here, all said and all done, and they took out nearly 500 of Santa Anna's men. He had a lot, but he brought 1,100 as a full force to take this out. What was remaining of his army, he was heading towards Houston, and after that battle, they found Santa Anna. He actually tried to flee. He actually was in a private's uniform, and he got caught because one of his soldiers saluted him. And he was brought over to Sam Houston, who was injured. He fell off. His horse was underneath of him, and he was laying on trees. So they bring Santa Anna over. They hold him for a couple of weeks and say, "Listen, Texas is independent. You're taking all of your men, and you're going south of the Rio Grande, and you're never coming back. Texas is our own place." Now, Mexico would not, initially try to cross over the Rio Grande, but they never acknowledged Texas's independence, and they never recognized it, from, after the battle. So now we have the Republic of Texas. The Republic of Texas is actually still being attacked even after the Alamo and the Battle of Jacinto, and 2 times in 1844. This fort is actually reclaimed by the Mexican army. They are quickly pushed out, but they are, essentially, they take Santa Anna twice in 1844. Again, the fort is never actually, the chapel was never finished during the time of the Texas Republic. They keep getting, the Texas needs to decide what they're going to do. They decide that, they are going to be annexed by the United States. They have a convention back at Washington on the Brazos about they're going to become part of the U.S. February 19th of 46. They join the United States as the 28th state of the Union. Mexico is livid. No, that's part of our territory. And Texas is nope, we're not. We're independent. This brought off the Mexican-American War, to where the U.S. Army would rush down here in 45, and as they start to annex, and they start developing this as a fort during the Mexican-American War, 45, 46, 47. The Mexican-American War, takes place until 48. The American Army would stay here. They actually put a roof on it, in 1850, and this becomes an American military fort. During the U.S. Civil War, the Union troops were actually stationed here when Texas seceded. So when the Confederates came in and said, "Surrender or we will kill you," the Union Army like, "Okay, here's the fort, we're just going to leave." In 1865, the Union troops come back and either leave or we're going to shoot you. So the Confederates surrendered. This place would still be used for a short period of time as a U.S. military fort. But by 1871, it's no longer used by the military. It becomes a commercial site. In fact, a lot of the stones, the reason why all these walls are gone is that they start selling it all off. They develop it, Maverick tries to develop it as a commercial center and residential center. And his house and office used to be right back behind here where the big building is now. All this is being stripped off and apart for being a quarry. The building that was the barracks, like I said, it was 2 stories. In fact, 3 stories at one time. This becomes part of a commercial store. There's liquor, there's whiskey, there is all kinds of commercial properties. The western wall is completely removed. They start building over here. Over here, they actually have They built, theaters, and they're building grand hotels throughout the area. And this is all being revamped into redevelopment. We're getting to the late 1800s and the early 1900s. The state of Texas, takes over the chapel, but the rest of the barracks where most of the fight took place is slated to be demolished to build a hotel. And one of the descendants of someone who fought in the battle, she decided, I can't do this. We're going to have to save it. And she actually gets a hold of a woman named Clara Driscoll, who's a philanthropist and a very wealthy woman. She actually buys the property and preserves it and saves it from being, demolished. And again, leaving these barracks over here as the oldest building in all of Texas. Going forward into the 20th century, the only thing that's really left is that building and the Alamo, and the Daughters of the Texas Revolution. They are kind of controlling and guarding it. It's their job to kind of just keep it going. That's their job. They maintain it. They own it for quite some time. More recently, the state of Texas has taken over the property, and they are actually really working at trying to bring back, through either physical reconstruction or digital reconstruction, as much of the Alamo as they possibly can. So all this construction, a lot of this happened around 1900, 1903, up into the 20th century. So there's a lot of construction going on back here. They're trying to reconstruct some of the old structures. Behind me is a new visitor center that they are building. This will be open sometime in 2025. And so some of it, and a lot of it, you can't go any further. I mean, this is the southern wall. This is the very southern wall. So I mean, they got space, but all this flooring is going to be taken up. The post office and the federal courthouse. I mean, that's not going anywhere. We're talking 50 feet into that building. That's not going anywhere. So, but you are going to have a good chunk of the structure, reclaimed. One of the things that is really interesting is that this courtyard, when this was actually used as a mission, this was the graveyard. They're finding all kinds. There's all kinds of bodies there. They're all still there. And when they were building the original courthouse, they were finding bodies there too. This is all sacred land, sacred ground. Not only for the Tejanos, the Texians, but many natives that have been here. This was never an official native burial ground, but a lot of the ones who were actually defending this, the natives who were living here during the mission time, I mean, they had, their dead are buried here. And so we'll see what they're going to do. But they're working on making sure that they're all documented. These people's graves are, reminded, they're honored, they're treated with respect. And so the state of Texas is doing a good job at trying to preserve this area for all of its memories, from the 1708, 1709 mission to the battles of the Alamo, December of 35, February, March of 36, the Union and Confederate forts that were used here, and the Union again, and then all the soldiers that were here, making Texas great again. This is a very special place. One of the most interesting things about this, after the battle, a lot of the newspapers that made news all over the world, they actually started having information about how Thermopylae, the 300 during the Persian invasion of Greece, had an equal at the Alamo. At these 200 some men held off a large contingent of the Mexican army. And so, as far as Santa Anna is concerned, he would be the leader of Mexico like 11 times. He was actually put into exile into Cuba, and Polk, during the Mexican-American War, brought him out of exile, thinking that he would put him in charge of Mexico. He would get talked to Mexico into surrendering and to ending the Mexican-American War. He just expanded it because he's like, well, I'm going to retake all of Texas. And so it made the Mexican-American War longer by bringing Santa Anna back into the fight. But that is basically the history of the Alamo, how the Alamo got its name, what it was founded for, and a little bit of the origins of San Antonio. San Antonio, it's the county seat of Bexar County. It's spelled, with an X, so a lot of people mispronounce it, but it is Bexar. This is one of the most beautiful cities in Texas. It's the oldest city in Texas. The river walk here is absolutely gorgeous. I recommend anyone who's going to be down here in Texas to come and check out San Antonio. There are several missions here. This is not just this one. There are several ones here. One of the more interesting aspects of it is, I'm going to point this out very, very specifically if I could, is that this little top right here, this little part of the building, that wasn't a part of the original design. When the American Army put a roof on it, they actually built that little part where the sun's just at. I mean, this was actually just a flat roof initially. They actually gave it that roof profile. That's all the U.S. Army. That wasn't part of that. Wasn't what it looked like when the defenders were defending it. So I hope everyone enjoyed this. My name is Nathaniel Gavronsky. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and as always, stay wise, Texas.